Welcome to the Self-Carapist podcast. Join me, Lorain, a licensed psychotherapist, clinical supervisor, and EMDR consultant, along with expert guests as we explore the approaches and modalities we've used and developed to support our clients' success. Our conversations and stories are designed to inspire new and seasoned clinicians to stay curious, prioritize self-care, and never stop learning. This episode is a great one for anyone who has been curious about couples therapy. Dr. Marni Feuerman is a licensed clinical social worker, licensed marriage and family therapist, and also holds a doctorate in psychology. She maintains a busy private practice in the South Florida area, where her clinical focus includes relationship problems, marriage, infidelity, dating, and divorce. As a nationally recognized relationship and marriage expert, her contributions and articles have appeared in countless online media outlets, which we discuss, along with the benefits of Gottman and emotionally focused therapy, strategies for different challenges that come up in couples therapy, and some of the dating and attachment challenges that she goes over in her book, Ghosted and Breadcrumbed. If this episode inspires you to want to read some more of the books or take some of the trainings mentioned, head over to my website, lorainmoorhead.com/podcast, and download the learning tracker that features all the key resources from every episode. Welcome, Dr. Feuerman.
Hi, great to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. I told you one of the reasons I was most excited to talk to you is because you have this great and solid EFT as well as Gottman trained background. Can you describe a little bit about what the process has been like in kind of coming up the ranks in both of those?
Yeah, sure. So it's a long process, especially for both or to do two different things. I just had been working with couples, and I love working with couples. So that was my focus. I knew I needed additional training in couples therapy. And I had always read a lot of the Gottman's books. I think their books, their research is, excellent. It's profound. It's one of those things where if you're like, a bit of a psychology or a therapy nerd, like a lot of us are, you read that stuff and you're like, wow, that's neat. That's interesting. Oh my gosh. So, I liked it. And then, but I got introduced to emotionally focused couples therapy, which is Sue Johnson's work. And I pursued that all the way to certification. And then I became a certified supervisor. So now I also help therapists become certified in EFT. And so for Gottman, I got up to level 3, and I feel like the knowledge is really good. And of course, I always recommend people to be very well-rounded with the work. I also got certified in discernment counseling, which is quite different. And we don't have to talk about that today because that could be like a whole other show. But that's also good for dealing with couples that have ambivalence, like one person might be leaning out of the relationship, one is leaning in, divorce is on the table, or their goals aren't aligned. So that's also been helpful. I would tell people that you'll know what fits for you, because stylistically, people are drawn to different types of methods. Some people want to learn, IFS, some people want to learn CBT. So you'll see what resonates for you as a therapist, and certainly EFT resonated for me. And then the other thing that I felt was also really important was that EFT actually has more outcome research showing that it's been, it's successful in terms of a therapeutic approach. Gottman has a ton of research, but not as much outcome research. And so there's just a bit of a difference in that. But both, I think, inform my practice, and I would recommend looking into both for people.
Yeah. Gottman, the books do such a good job of giving a lot of psychoeducation and a lot of explanation of what you're seeing. And I mean, obviously based on a lot of studies that they've completed themselves. And is it the Love Lab?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
was fascinating, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's so cool. But it's neat to hear that when you became introduced to EFT, that really felt like the modality that you could take and use in your work and just run with it.
Yeah, and then the other thing that's happened over the last few years is EFT was expanded to also work with individuals and with families. And I love that aspect of it too. So it was just easy to segue into those other modalities. Because if you think about it, when people come to therapy, even if they're coming for individual therapy, you're doing systemic work because you're thinking about that person in relation to all the other people in their lives. And so you're going to want to have a systemic framework to use. And so that's been really beneficial to me as well. Gottman, their work and their research is geared more towards romantic married couples and also some singles. They've done some stuff to expand it to work with singles. And but in terms of, again, I think the systemic framework and the systemic training that EFT offered, I think was much more expansive. It's much more expansive now. So I find that really useful as well in practice.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense that we don't have one type of client or even one type of couple. Even friendship therapy is becoming a bigger thing, you know?
Yes, exactly.
What are the different abbreviations we might see for different types of EFT?
So it started out where it would just be EFT, or emotionally focused therapy. And when they expanded to the two other modalities, individual and family work, they started to add that other letter to distinguish it for people. So EFCT is emotionally focused couples therapy. EFIT is emotionally focused individual therapy, and then EFFT, emotionally focused family therapy. And so you'll see those, floating around out there.
Yeah, that's great to know. What, if anything, would you want to do differently if you were to start your career over?
The only thing I think I would do is I was introduced to EFT, which is also a model that's like uses a lot of emotional depth, and it's also experiential. So very different than like a purely cognitive method. So if I were to change anything, I probably would have tried to learn an experiential type approach or a process experiential approach earlier, because I had learned, like coming out of school, a lot of CBT, which again has an excellent, it is great, right? And it's excellent for, I think, certain populations or certain conditions that you're dealing with. So any of these other things I'm saying, I'm in no way poo-pooing them or saying that they're not good. So I just want to get that out there. It's just what would resonate for you as a therapist, and also of course, the population you're working with. That is most important, is who are you working with and what is the best approach to help them, and what is in your skill set that you've been trained in to help them. So I had to unlearn a lot. I had to unlearn a lot of the strategies that were much more geared towards CBT and cognitive approaches, and also solution focused. And I did learn a little bit of psychodynamic, which I would say was maybe the closest thing, like a cousin to the process experiential and emotionally focused approaches. So that was certainly helpful. But I think when you've been training and you're in other models, and then you're like, well, I really love this other model and I want to learn that model, there's a good chance you have to unlearn stuff. And that was my situation.
Yeah. By experiential, do you mean that during the trainings you're going through it, similar to what happens in an EMDR or brain spotting?
Yes. So experiential means that the actual therapy session is an experience designed to create change. So in EFCT, I'll just give you like a quick prime example.
Yeah.
If I am working with somebody and I am trying to get them to actually feel the feelings that they're mentioning or talking about, and bring them up in the session, and also expand and deepen them around that emotion. Like, let's say it's sadness. It's okay for me to linger there with the person in the sadness. And if it brings tears to their eyes, comment on it, allow them to have the experience of sadness in real time in my session. With the couples, there's a piece that's called an enactment. So that's another way I create change experientially. So you may be talking to me, which it's always a little easier to talk to the therapist, about, let's say the sadness you're experiencing is because you feel rejected when your spouse shuts down. I'm just going to throw that out as an example. I may have then you turn to your partner and say, you're telling me so much about the sadness. I would love for you to turn to your partner right now and look in their eyes and talk about the sadness. And then I'm going to process that encounter, or that enactment. And there's also different ways to process it based on the response of the partner. But that is an actual experience. They're not just talking to me, but they're actually talking to their partner. And that creates deeper level change because the person is actually going through it and doing it as opposed to just talking about it from a cognitive place. And the example I give a lot of people, and I think it will also help therapists listening to this, if you think about like when you learned a sport, let's say golf or tennis or even to ride a bike, if I explained to you how to do those things, you would only have cognitive understanding about it. But when I say, okay, we're going to go on the tennis court or we're going to get on the bike and we're going to ride it, it's a totally different thing. And it takes practice and it takes some muscle memory and some procedural memory. And so that is one of the key reasons around how change happens in people and in relationships. And so we're wanting them to not just talk about riding the bike, we're wanting them to get on the bike. So we don't just want them to talk about their sadness from a cognitive place around something going on in the relationship. We're wanting them to actually learn how to speak to their partner, and we're going to want to help the partner know how to receive that and respond to that. So that's the experiential part. And process, when I say process, I'm referring to present process. So again, what comes alive in the actual session, and that means that I'm working in a process way, and in that experiential way as well, as much as possible in the session. Certainly, we're not doing that for the entirety of the session. That would be very difficult to do, but we're spending a significant amount of time in a process experiential way in the sessions.
Yeah. Oh, that explanation is so great and makes so much sense. You're really accessing a different part of the brain. And when someone leaves, having gone through it, they feel those connections in their bones. They've made new neural connections and they're leaving, not actively thinking, oh, here I'm supposed to say this. They're feeling that new process.
Exactly. And think about it, when our clients go home and if we've taught them something, let's say verbally, it goes out the window when people are really emotional. So in EFT, we want to harness emotion and we want to use emotion, but we're using it certainly in a very directive type of way because we're wanting people to learn about their emotional worlds and how they get triggered and why they do what they do and what moves they do, like in their relationship. But if we just said, oh, like when you are home and you're sad with your partner, can you just tell them with an I statement? Okay. Which again, that isn't bad or wrong, but what will happen is when people get hijacked, the rational part of their brain is often not online, right? So they can't access that wonderful thing you just taught them in the session. But if you took them through it and they did it in your session, it's now more in the bones, muscle memory, and it will they'll be able to draw upon it, most likely. Sometimes you have to repeat this several times, but the idea is that they can draw on that in real time when they're home. They're doing that in a way that they may not be able to do if it was just taught to them from a cognitive place.
Yeah. So neat. How does it start when in initial sessions to set the pace for this work that they're going to be doing? Because sometimes our clients come in a pretty high conflict with pretty, ingrained patterns of.
Yeah, well, as I'm sure you know, every case, every client is different. Every couple is different. So even when people try to tell me what the issue is, like on the phone or in the first email, I ignore it entirely because I'm like, they don't know what's going on. That's why they need help. That's why they need someone to take this aerial view and guide them a bit. So when they first come in, of course, I'm really thorough with the assessment and with EFT. And I believe with Gottman as well does it this way. And I would certainly, no matter what your approach, I would highly recommend doing an assessment this way, where you see the couple first initially, and then you see each partner individually one time. This way you can really get a lot of information about their history, their background, their family history, dating history, and maybe some things that they're just not as comfortable sharing and right in front of their partner, but it's things that are essential for you to know. And also you may have ruled them out as like a candidate for couples therapy, depending on what you find out. So then when they come back together again, moving forward, like let's say they both are, it is determined that they're good candidates for therapy. Then I'm working with them pretty much together the whole time. I don't really separate them out after that. And then I'm usually trying to give them some feedback and give them an idea of what we're going to be doing and the rationale for it. I don't give a whole lot of information because it's one of those things where it's like I can explain it or I can do it. So if I'm using your session to just explain, then we're not actually doing the therapy. So some couples, yes, they're highly distressed, and and sometimes it's a very chaotic type of cycle that you're seeing. And sometimes with those couples, I will have to tell them, like, hey, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but you are here because you need help. And so I may interrupt. I may slow things down. I'm going to insert myself at times. And this way I can be truly helpful. So sometimes I'm giving them a little bit of information about the structure of it. And then I have other couples that they're just very nicely kind of following me along and going along, and they're letting me take them wherever they need to go. And then you get like everything in between. You get all gradients in between. And so if people want to do some stuff, I don't give homework necessarily, but if people want it and they'll actually do it, I will usually have them read books. So I'll have them read like Hold Me Tight by Dr. Sue Johnson, or I'll have them read. I really love some of the Gottman books that are geared towards a lay audience. So I will give them those things to read on their own between sessions. And then I also love when they come in with some of their insights because of what they've been reading. So that's really helpful as well. And the main thing that I'm certainly trying to delineate is their negative pattern. I really don't want to blame either person for the problem in the relationship. I look at the relationship as my client itself. So the in between, I always say, hey, I'm going to look about what's kind of going on in between the two of you, the interaction. But you will learn a lot psychologically yourself. You will learn and grow a lot, and it will also help your relationship as well. So I'm trying to see, who pursues or escalates, who withdraws, who avoids. Do they both avoid? Is nobody talking about anything at all and they've grown into roommate zone? Are they both extremely explosive together and they both attack each other in they both blame? So how does that pattern and cycle look? And I'm really trying to gauge that for them, and some of their protective moves is what we call it. So some people certainly have behaviors that are protective in the relationship, but they fuel the cycle. So someone might be shutting down because they're overwhelmed, or they don't feel like they can ever get it right with their spouse, so they just decide they're not saying anything at all. That's just an example, but I'm trying to unpack those types of things for the couple. and hopefully try to shift that dance that they're doing to a much healthier one.
Oh, yeah. Great explanation. Do you see individuals in your practice?
Yeah, I also do some individual therapy as well. I would say I'm more on the eclectic side, or I use different approaches, but I do a lot of the emotionally focused individual therapy as well, which certainly has a lot of crossover with what I do for couples, but there's no enactment to a partner, right?
Sure.
But we do something called encounters, which are in a nutshell, like imagined conversations. So if this could be with a parent, this could be with a spouse, this could be with a friend, this could be with a part of self, this could be with like an inner child part. So they're doing these imaginal conversations to help them certainly problem solve, but also maintain their emotional balance when they start to feel some symptoms of being, dysregulated or thrown off balance. So it is very useful with that as well.
Yeah. Do you ever have individuals that you see ask to bring a partner to one session, or just to have them join periodically?
Yeah. So every situation is a little different. So I would say it just depends. If I can catch it early on where I'm hearing something, in fact, this happened pretty recently where the wife came in, but after like the first 2 sessions, so the assessment and then one session, I was like, this is really a relational issue. This is a marital issue. And I think we could go so much further with our work if you brought in your partner. Is he willing? And she said, you get all kinds of answers. Some people say never, they never would. I try to help coach them on how to ask, like if they just never even brought it up. And so this person did go back and ask their partner. The partner was very willing to come in. And so we just completely switched gears like very quickly. But if I'm working with someone and it's been months, it really isn't great to pivot like that, because that alliance is really built up with that primary client. And so it doesn't often go well. And in that case, I would just offer a referral. I would say, hey, it seems like you could really benefit from someone to look at this relationship and work with you both. Are you willing to do that? And give a referral. And then you have cases where it's primarily individual work, but there's things that I'm hearing that tell me, or the client is telling me, that it would be good to get collateral information. And that's kind of what we call it. So that other person's coming in, they're not the client, they're not joining the client, you're not working with the whole system, but you're getting this information to help you help the client. Because someone else's view of this person, especially someone that they're interacting with a lot, can be so helpful in kind of knowing more, like, oh, what you're dealing with, or goals to create for that person, and so on. So it could be helpful in lots of different ways. I would say, again, the primary assessment is going to help you know what direction you're going to want to go.
Yeah, I think that parameter is a really helpful one for clinicians listening to keep in mind, that if it feels like that's at the start of the work that you're doing, then that can be safe and appropriate. And if it feels like you've already done so much work and now you would be integrating someone, like that parameter of just keeping in mind that it might be more helpful and more safe to just refer the whole unit out.
Right, exactly. I totally, agree with that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's really helpful to keep in mind, and I think there are a lot of reasons for that too. But after you've established that closeness, that close therapeutic relationship with a client, a partner joining is just going to feel like they are a third wheel, and
they're going to feel, even if you aren't, even if like you're really good at navigating that bias, you don't want to be accused of it. And also sometimes it's difficult because, think about it. I want to honor the client's view, right? I want, if they're coming in saying, well, I just kind of think that you're taking my wife's side because you've been seeing her for 4 months before I came in. You can't unring that bell, So I think it's better to try to make sure that you are, starting out on level ground, level playing field. And so you're just at high risk for that. And you're just much better off letting them start with somebody new where it's just, they're a blank slate. And this way it doesn't affect the alliance, because in all methods, no matter what ones we're talking about, the alliance is absolutely critical. And if that alliance is off, no matter what approach you're using, it's not going to flow well from that. You have to always address that alliance issue before anything else. And if someone accuses you of being biased or taking sides, then you've got one on your hands. So,
yeah, a great summary. In addition to all of this great and rich clinical work that we can tell you're doing, you do a lot of different things in your day-to-day. You're a speaker, you're an author, you're a writer. Can you tell a little bit about how you got into that and what that fulfills for you, if anybody's interested in hearing more about that path?
Yeah. Well, I would say several purposes here, but I always liked writing. It was just something I enjoyed doing just as a hobby. And in school, I always liked writing papers. I know that seems really nerdy, but I did. And of course, I like reading. So I started to do just blog writing, just my own personal website blog writing. And then I started to write for a website called Your Tango that helps you get your blogs on their website and sometimes syndicates the blogs. And so I just had a lot of success with that. And then a website called about.com had found me. I'm not exactly sure how they found me, but they then hired me to be the marriage content writer for about.com. About that actual website was like super popular. It's not around anymore because they divided it up into like 8 different websites. They just made a lot of changes with it. But I did that for a while as well. And and so I just really liked doing it. And so the other thing that it did was it created like what's called a content marketing strategy for my website. So all the keywords I want to show up for that I work with show up organically on Google just because I have so many original blogs. Okay, original meaning not AI. First of all, when I wrote all these blogs, AI was not around. So there's nothing about that. Not that I don't think AI has a role and can help you, and it can help you plan some content stuff. But Google is starting to tell the difference, certainly. And so when you have original blogs and therapists, you have an education, like you have a lot to offer, people with your knowledge, and putting it out there in written word really helps you be found online and be seen as an expert. And so from there, I also would do a lot of media contributions as well. And so it just all worked really synergistically. So, and then once in a while, I'll do like presentations, or I'll do the interviews like I'm doing now. I'll do webinars for professionals and things like that. And I've done Hold Me Tight workshops, which are for couples based on, Sue Johnson's works. Then eventually, of course, when you write a lot, one of your dreams is to write like a self-help book. I did in 2019, I wrote a self-help book, and this was geared more towards women who find themselves in repetitive patterns of relationships with unhealthy or unavailable men. And they keep kind of repeating this over and over. And so the book is geared towards helping women figure out what's going on and how to get out of that circumstance and what a healthy relationship is like and all of that, so that they can, hopefully gain some insights into like why they keep on getting stuck in this pattern.
Yeah. So as you know, I really enjoyed the book, Ghosted and Breadcrumbed.
Yes, I got mine here too. Thank you so much.
And I think one of the things that was refreshing about it is that you take a really clear approach about what types of things to look for and how to see certain things happening in relationships for what they really are. So like a lack of effort, you tie some of these things into attachment styles, and you're kind of direct about what you see, what the possible outcomes could be, whether they're is opportunity for positive outcomes and what it would take to get there.
Yes. Yeah, I'm in no way saying that all these circumstances are hopeless, but you have to have someone who's also willing to take feedback and do the work with you, because it's certainly possible to have this like what's called earned security, meaning like if you have an insecure attachment style and your partner has an insecure style, it doesn't mean you can't get to a place of earned security together. But I think the biggest problem that I think I was seeing is that sometimes a woman especially, is trying harder and harder, and they're trying to mold themselves to fit a person, or they're thinking their love can help them or fix them. And so I want women to certainly recognize unavailable partners and maybe know when to kind of cut ties and walk away, or how to approach it and see if the person is willing to do something about it. So how to really communicate effectively and assertively and directly. And so it's discerning like what's in front of you, what situation do you have, and maybe why. Like, why are you maybe drawn to these types of people? And there's plenty of clues, not always, but there's a lot of clues at times in somebody's background, what's happened to them, trauma, family of origin stuff. So I'm wanting people to connect dots and kind of put those pieces together around why they might be drawn or feel comfortable or that familiarity with those situations. And so the book goes through, I think, a lot of different channels, with that. So identifying those types of people, identifying what might be going on with themselves, understanding what a healthy relationship looks like and how to set goals to get there. So we kind of cover the whole thing, but I wanted to make sure it was heaviest on the solutions and how to get from, like, if you're in this bad place, how to get to a better place. Because I find a lot of self-help books would describe the problem over and over, and that'd be like 80% of the book would be just describing the problem, and I really don't want to do that. So I spend some time describing the problem, but a lot on, well, here's what you can do about it.
Mm-hmm. How much do you incorporate some of your identifying of what's going on into your couples sessions? Like, how much do you utilize some of the principles that you explain in the book, or vice versa? How much of your couples work showed up in the book?
Yeah, both. I mean, I feel like the book is also like a product of like reverse engineering in a way. Like, what I know, I'm trying to get couples to, and also individuals to. And again, whether it's Gottman or EFT or some other research that's out there, we do have a lot of good information. We have better science now. We have more knowledge about love and what makes relationships succeed and fail. And so I'm kind of working backwards a bit, with people, and especially somebody who hasn't chosen a partner yet. I want them to make a better choice, because this is like one of the most important decisions you are going to make in your life is committing to a partner. And so if I can make people make better choices, then I'm happy. I'm happy I've been able to contribute to that. And so I think some of the strategies, so some of the protective strategies that people have, it shows up individually, it shows up dating, it shows up in relationships. And so I think no matter who I'm working with, I'm always looking at that. And attachment does give us a good chunk of answers. I wouldn't say it's everything. And I think attachment can have some flexibility depending on who you're with. We all know there's people that might bring out the worst in us. They might make us feel really, really anxious or off balance, where someone else can make us feel really safe and secure. And so I think I use it both of those directions, and just kind of understanding how attachment security works, and then kind of going backwards from there with people, whether it's a couple or an individual.
Yeah. Is there any attachment research or literature beyond what's incorporated into Dr. Sue Johnson's work that you recommend if someone wants to become more familiar?
I'm not sure all of the titles, if I'm getting this right. I have read quite a few, but there's definitely some books out there. One of them that I read, I think it's called On Being Attached. The author is Robert Karen, Karen. That's probably one of the best ones that just sort of summarizes a ton of research that's out there. And there's certainly some researchers that aren't clinical therapists, but they're doing a lot of this, research, and they're publishing articles, and there's always stuff coming out. And then there's a lot of crossover with some of the psychologists and scientists that are doing interpersonal neurobiology work. And that would be under the umbrella or attachment would be under that bigger umbrella as well.
Great. I'll link all of these ideas in the show notes. One of the things I see a lot of high achieving career and entrepreneurial clients, and a lot of them are still dating, and it can be a struggle to discern the importance of things they're looking for, and chemistry is a big one that comes to mind because it feels like it has to be at the top of the list. And you kind of address this in the book as well. Could you explain your perspective on chemistry? How much do we need? How to attain it in a way that's healthy in the long term?
Yeah. So the funny thing is that with Gottman, who's got this extensive arsenal of research, and understands so much about relationships and all the predictors of divorce and all these great things, even he has said that there's no way to predict chemistry. So you could have these two people who just look like the most phenomenal match on paper, but get together and have no chemistry. So what I would say is this: do you need it? Yeah, because I think it helps create some of the glue that's going to hold you together, and certainly attraction feeds into chemistry. And you can only imagine what would happen if you married someone or you were with someone and you weren't really attracted to them. Evolutionary, that is what has kept our species going, right? Is that there's attraction, and when you're attracted, then you want to get together, and you know what happens from there.
Hang in there, and
right. So who's gonna? Right. So if people aren't doing that, that's very problematic. But I would say is this: you should feel some chemistry, but not at the expense of all of the other necessary ingredients for a healthy, stable relationship. That's the best way I would put it. So if you have chemistry, but you also have, you feel safe, you feel secure, you feel that the person's consistent, reliable, caring, empathic, they're showing up in those ways. They're present. You feel like you can count on them. You're going to absolutely need that as well. And so if you have chemistry, but you don't have any of that, I would say extreme caution to you, because we know those are the things that are necessary for a healthy, thriving relationship. And then the other thing is, I would say, make sure you do some personal work if you've been exposed to some overwhelming or difficult circumstances earlier in your life, because you also don't want what you're calling chemistry or thinking is chemistry to actually be just your attachment system activating because something feels familiar or comfortable because you were exposed to it. Like if you had a parent who was abusive and you've learned to kind of pair love with abusive or not so great behavior, when somebody isn't nice to you or they're mean or they are abusive to you, you may think that's the way it's supposed to be, or that's how you're supposed to feel. And that's where it can get really tricky for people. So I would just want people to really parse that out and understand that, certain things are kind of coming alive and kind of, like in the book, I say kind of running the show from behind the scenes. This gets stuck in our implicit memory. And so we're drawn to some of these circumstances and we're labeling it something like chemistry. And it could possibly be clouded up by something else. And I would just want people to be very clear and certain about that. And that They absolutely need, some other things other than just, than just chemistry. We've all heard that phrase, like love is not enough. And I mean, that's true. Love is not enough. Otherwise, like, a lot more people would make it, and they often don't because of some of these things that are these bad or these negative traits and ways of interacting in a relationship we know like dooms them. So
we see this a lot, that what feels like or is explained by chemistry often looks like a reward system, like Pavlov and his dogs, where,
yes.
Oh, I'm getting that attention after having been
right.
Someone being unkind to me or someone withdrawing
Right.
from me, and my blood is pumping. I'm feeling so excited. I feel so wanted. That's chemistry. I like that feeling.
Right.
And it's kind of just replaying these family of origin patterns that were established long before this connection.
Yes, 100%. And it could feel, like you said, sometimes even addictive, or it's activating the same type of chemicals in our brain.
Yeah. I would be remiss if I didn't ask this follow-up question too. How early do you find that your clients feel that chemistry with someone new? And how much would you weigh in on someone who is considering not seeing a person again if that connection doesn't feel like it's instantly there?
Oh boy, right. I think from my personal knowledge and what I've read that, I think women are usually have a little more flexibility around this, where they're willing to maybe wait a little longer to see if they can develop some chemistry with the person. I find that really difficult with men, where if they don't feel it instantly, they are done. They are not going to like see what happens. So, so there's that piece of it. You could have like significant attraction and some chemistry very, very early. I would say take it at face value. Say to yourself, it's okay to say to yourself, yes, this feels really good. Don't label it necessarily love or something, or this person might be my soulmate. I wouldn't go that far. I would just say, yeah, we have chemistry. It feels good. I'm really attracted to this person. This person seems attracted to me. I won't take that feeling away from anyone because that feels great. Okay, we all like want to feel that way. But I would say slow down enough to really figure out who this person is. Are your values aligned? Are they showing up in a consistent way, and they're responsible and reliable and they're making you feel safe? Are they doing that and not love bombing you and, calling you 50 times a day and all that stuff? So what are you learning about them? Not just based on what they say, but their behavior. And so that's what I would caution people. And something that I do mention in the book too about people who are narcissistic, whether that's narcissistic traits or full-blown narcissistic personality or whatever, those people they attract people right away too, because they're exuding some type of chemistry or charisma. They're usually good-looking people. They usually don't have a hair out of place. They're usually dressed really stylish, So, but you could have a person that isn't available to you at all, isn't going to treat you right, is going to bring you down, is going to try to take you down, isn't empathic, so you got to see what's like behind the curtain, right? You got to see what's back there and really get to know the person. And I really hope for everybody that what starts out initially as strong attraction and chemistry is, what you think it is and grows to that, but don't like deny red flags when you see them, or don't downplay when you learn about the person and you're like, oh, well, that doesn't align with me or my beliefs or my way of living, or that, I want you to really honor, yourself and what you're hearing and take it as the truth as to what they're telling you or what their behavior is. And don't think that some of those things are necessarily going to change.
You said something so important, which was not just what they tell you, because we know that people's ability to self-report is pretty limited. And sometimes you'll hear, oh, I'm this type of person and this is how I like to show up. And until you see the prospective partner in action in different scenarios, just like how we want to assess for ADHD across settings, until you've seen someone and how they show up across settings.
Yes.
we don't want to just go with their personal description because that's hard for people.
Yeah. And also getting like trusted others. Have a good friend and you trust their judgment, or a parent who you have a good relationship with. You're going to want to also see what they say as well, because a lot of times they're going to see something you don't see because you are kind of caught up in the feelings and what we call the limerence, or what Gottman has labeled the limerence, I should say, phase of the early state of the relationship. So I think that's also important too.
Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to encourage clinicians working with couples to do more or less of?
I would say always keep learning. Like even though I'm a supervisor, I still learn stuff from other people, from people that are even higher trained than me. I also learn from people who maybe have training in a very compatible model or a compatible approach that fits with, what I'm doing with the couple. I would say being really just open to learning and be a lifelong learner, and then also get the best supervision that you can afford, or consultation. Like for some people, if you're already licensed, it's consultation. And I think that keeps you very grounded. And also we have to unload, like we doing this work is hard, right? Being a therapist is hard. Working with couples is even 10 times harder, right? This is difficult, challenging work. So I think it's good to have consultation with another therapist, maybe somebody with even more training or higher level than you have. It's good. I still do it. So I recommend it as well. And I'd say that's what I would wish for people, those two things. Keep learning and get good consultation.
I think if I were to be asked that, I would probably have the exact same answer. Because that's really the whole mission of the Self-Carapist podcast, is to expose people on what to learn, like what's available to learn. Just like you said about EFT and just an experiential model, we come out of school steeped in the models that our school knows well, and that our professors know well. And so to get further out and say, oh, I could do this. Oh, these guys are doing that. I want to explore that more. I think it's so neat to just be exposed to different opportunities and models and how they work. And the supervision is so huge too, because I really didn't realize 20 years ago that it was possible just to be able to consult with someone or have them beyond what your agency or your center where you were employed provided, to do some of that work. And some of the work that I've done in consultation for EMDR is the most valuable work I've ever done, because someone was really watching my sessions.
Yes. And taping and having session tapes so that the person that you're consulting with sees exactly what you're doing. So that's also really helpful. And I know it requires a lot of bravery and vulnerability and all that too. And I did it, and believe me, I know, and I have, a lot of compassion, for the therapists that do that. And I also do a lot of consultation too. And so I think those therapists that are doing that with me, I'm like really proud of them, because they are showing their work and they're putting themselves out there to do that. And like you said, you're getting this direct feedback about your work, and you are going to improve yourself. It's a therapeutic, it's like a good relationship too that you could have with your consultant. And I would absolutely put it into a big piece of like self-care for sure as a therapist.
Yeah. What are some ways, if people are listening right now and they're curious about getting into some of the things that we've talked about, what would you recommend as some first steps?
If you don't want to, let's say, take a big leap, expensive leap, I'll say, there's very good books. I think it's called the general one by Sue Johnson is Attachment Theory in Practice, I want to say. And then Gottman has some clinical books as well. I think one is called The Marriage Clinic. I'm sure he's got some others. So I would start just maybe with some of the books, perusing them, and see what resonates for you as a therapist and see what, and then maybe taking some actual training. You can easily do like a level 1 Gottman. You can do EFT externship is 4 days, but they do have, I think, a 1-day fundamentals class, and that's through ICEFT. ICEEFT is the parent organization for all the EFT trainings. And then Gottman Institute, you can find all those resources for Gottman method. So I would say take the basic trainings of both. I mean, to me, there's nothing that compares with being in a live training as opposed to like, reading a book or watching a recording of a training. Both of those are going to have role-playing pieces, which are, I know a lot of people don't like to do that, but again, that is the best way to learn, where they're going to teach a skill, you're going to practice the skill. And that's a way for you to get it in your bones as well. So I would definitely encourage people just to look at those basic trainings, and you really can't go wrong. It's not like you'd be wasting your time or money. Like, you will always use that education when you're working, whether you work with individuals or couples or not. I think it's really good, effective training to have.
Yeah. And then for folks who are a little bit further along in EFT, it sounds like they could be in touch with you to do some of their consultation work. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do. Regular consultation. I'm an ICEFT certified supervisor. And so I help people also get certified in emotionally focused therapy.
Hey. And then your practice is in Florida.
Yeah, I am based in South Florida. And I have my South Florida psychotherapy website is thetalkingsolution.com. And then I have another website that has a lot of my books and some other stuff on it, which is drmarnionline.com.
Okay, great. I'll link all of that. And so my final questions that I love to ask everybody. The first one, is there anything that you're consuming right now, media, food, or otherwise?
Yeah, I am watching Dexter again, the new Dexter that just came out. Resurrection.
Oh, I didn't realize that had already started. Oh, I watched all of the original ones.
Oh, good. You'll have it just started recently. So I'm enjoying that. I know this may seem really weird, but I do like true crime. It's probably just my psychology brain kind of, interested in the whole criminology side of things too. And I love to continue reading, psychology books. And once in a while I'll read a memoir. But everybody's bothering me to read fiction. So I do have to get a good fiction book, on my list. And then also I like to, as far as fun goes, I like to cook. I like to work out. I like to do yoga. I like to hang out with my family and play with my dog, and those sorts of things. And so, yeah, all good stuff.
Yeah. Is there anything beyond the list that you just gave us that you do for self-care or that you recommend for your clients' self-care?
Well, what I've been learning and what makes a lot of sense is self-care is not like saying, hey, go get a massage, or that people have to change their mindset, and it's a slow wind down. And that's what I've had to do as well. Things like just limiting my schedule, because how great am I going to be if I'm seeing 10 couples a day? Like, you only have so much bandwidth and energy to give. So, just knowing that that's like a shift in how you're seeing the world and how you're framing things up, and that you could, if you have a goal to have like your own self-care be better, or, and also what I tell my clients is, this is going to be a journey to getting there. Like, what is it that we're going to have to wind down or eliminate or shift priorities with? Or where are we going to no longer spend time? And then where are we going to spend more time because it fills you up and energizes you? So this could be many months. So self-care isn't just about, paying for certain services to get pampered, right?
Yes.
Not that I think those are great too, but when we talk about self-care psychologically, I think we're talking about like a longer term goal to get people to where they're not feeling so maxed out and burned out and exhausted. And so that's going to be, a goal with objectives that are going to be plotted out throughout time.
I think you explained that really, really well, that beyond doing, sometimes it's really seeing the big picture, because if you're draining so much from over here, then doing something over here might feel good, and it's not going to really level out what's happening over here.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And I just love the concept of the podcast, that you're talking to other professionals about their work, and certainly about self-care and balance, and all of these really important topics that we all need. So I just want to say that I think you're doing a great service to therapists by talking about this.
Thank you so much. I've been looking so forward to this interview, and I'm so excited that you were able to be here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Self-Carapist podcast. If you did, please subscribe and feel free to leave a review. You can also follow along at the Self-Carapist on Instagram, or head to lorainmoorhead.com/podcast to grab a free copy of your own learning map worksheet to help track all of the tools and strategies you're interested in learning more about. See you next Wednesday.